I think we'll get started now. So welcome everyone to the online student information session for St. Vincent's Institute. My name is Tom Brodnicki, but what I'd like to do first is hand over to Natalie Sims, who is the Deputy Director of the Institute, and she's recorded a welcome message.
Hello and welcome to St. Vincent's Institute. My name is Professor Natalie Sims. I'm the Deputy Director of St. Vincent's Institute, or SVI, as I'll refer to us a lot. And I'm really pleased to welcome you to our open day. I'm sorry I'm not speaking to you live. By the time you watch this, I'll be presenting our team's work at a conference in Texas. So I've recorded it ahead of time. I'm recording this here in my office at St. Vincent's Institute, which rests on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So as we meet, I pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people and acknowledge their continuing custodianship of the land, sea and sky surrounding SVI, as well as their role as the first scientists here on Wurundjeri land. So I'm going to tell you a bit about SVI so you can understand who we are and what we do. This is our building and a map to show you where we are. We're on the campus of St. Vincent's Hospital, which means that some of our research teams also carry out clinical research with patients or with patient samples. Our mission is to do world-class science, and our motto is inspired by discovery and driven by purpose. What we want to do is to make medical discoveries that can transform lives and improve the health of people around the globe. We value things like integrity, open-mindedness, dedication and excellence. So that's a little bit about who we are. But I want to talk to you about why you might be interested in studying at SVI and what makes us different to other places where you might consider doing your research year, either as honours or as a PhD student. One of the main reasons is we're a medical research institute, so it's a little bit different to a university. I actually did my PhD in a research institute, not at SVI, but one of the reasons why I really loved working in a research institute is that it was quite different to my university experience. One of the reasons why it's so different is that making medical discoveries is our main business, and our scientists are world famous for the discoveries that they make. So the only students that we have are students who are learning how to do research and who are learning how to do meaningful research, whether they're at undergraduate level or honours students, masters or PhD students. We're not interested in just keeping you busy and giving you a piece of paper at the end. We want you to contribute to the research that we are doing. So doing higher degree research at SVI means that you're doing real research with a team of people whose main concern is to make discoveries. So our scientists, like John, you can see in this picture here, are really driven to carry out interesting and useful research, and they're going to work alongside you with their whole team to make sure that your discoveries are also useful. So training the next generation of researchers is something that's really, really important to us. We work on a wide range of questions and biological problems. So you can see a list of many of them here. It's not all of them. Our projects run the full spectrum from bioinformatics projects, so computer-based work, through to protein chemistry, through to human islet transplantation, through to discoveries in vascular biology and bone disease, a really big range of work. So you can see them listed here. We're not a single disease institute because we believe that useful discoveries can actually come out of left field. So understanding biology of one field can provide answers for another. So when you come and work at SVI, you're not only learning about your field of research or a particular type of method, but through our seminar program and through meeting others in the lab and in the tea room at the coffee machine, you'll get to hear about other fields of research. And sometimes you might find that your project crosses over into another field, and that's great news for everybody. We can all learn from each other. We also don't work, whoops, I went too far. We also don't work in isolation. SVI is pretty famous for being a very friendly place to work. And this is a photo of me with my former PhD student, Christina. And she carried out a study that used techniques from our lab and involved collaboration with Toby, who's standing next to her, who was doing a PhD in another lab. And it turned out that his techniques that he was using in his PhD studies provided the answer to the question about bone fragility that Christina was working on. So we're here with a structural biologist from SVI, the one with the moustache, celebrating Christina's success in getting her first grant at the end of her PhD. So there's a lot of stories like this, where teams at SVI work together across disciplines to make new discoveries. And here's Christina again, providing an example of another thing about the work that we do. It's really important for you to understand that at SVI, we use resources all over Melbourne for the work that we do. We really believe that you don't have to be in the same building as a piece of special equipment to use it. So we use resources both within SVI and at other sites. So this photo is of Christina and I working together at the Australian Synchrotron in Clayton. And there we're using their focused infrared beam to measure the internal composition of some brittle bone samples that we were working on. And the same is true for a lot of our researchers who use techniques like X-ray diffraction or cryo-EM, light sheet microscopy. We really make use of all of the facilities around Melbourne that we can. We also work with researchers from all around the world. This is my team out for lunch, and you can see that we've got visitors from Japan, Austria, Argentina, and China. And the same is true for any of the research teams here at SVI. World-class research means we have connections all over the world, some of whom come to visit us to learn from our work, but our students and our researchers also travel to work in laboratories overseas, to speak at conferences overseas, like I'll be doing by the time you hear this. And we're still constantly connected with our colleagues, working together over Zoom, sharing data and resources around the globe. And that has only increased since the pandemic. Another thing that's important to understand is that being a research student is really different to undergraduate study and coursework, and you will have heard this from many people. Essentially, you're taking your first step in an apprenticeship as a researcher. This is Martha, who's my current PhD student. She's going to be submitting her thesis any day now, and she's working in the tissue culture hood, and she's been working with us alongside other researchers, learning their techniques, but also learning how to think like a researcher, how to plan your work, how to execute experiments, and you'll be totally immersed in what life is like to be a scientist. And this isn't limited to life at the bench like Martha was doing. This is one of my former students, Nilofer, and she's presenting her work at a conference in Korea at the end of her PhD. So you'll also have opportunities to learn presentation skills, writing skills, how to establish networks, how to work in teams. And these are skills that are not important only for research, but for any career that you might go into after a PhD. Doing a PhD is not just about becoming an academic researcher. There's many paths that you can take after your PhD. So finally, I want to end on a personal story. So here's some old photos of me and my honours thesis, which you can see was quite a long time ago in 1990. Doing graduate research can actually be life-changing. I did my honours year a long time ago at the Institute for Medical and Veterinary Sciences, which used to exist in Adelaide. When I did honours, I had no intention of becoming a scientist. I thought I would take a year to do some research just to see what it was like. And maybe some of you are feeling like that as well. And it was really through the experience of doing full-time research for a year that I realized that this was really a job that I wanted to do and I wanted to continue with. So I went on and did a PhD and postdocs overseas and eventually started my lab. And now here I am, Deputy Director. It's been a really great life for me. I've really enjoyed working in research, and I really hope that you'll come and join us to experience it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of our open day. I hope I get to see you when you come and drop by the Institute. Love to talk to you more about research. So enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
So thanks to Natalie for doing the welcome. And I'm told she has actually safely arrived in Texas to give her talk. And also thanks to all of you who've taken the time to come check out SVI, even if it is only online this afternoon. As you already know, figuring out what you're going to do after university is important and often a very uncertain next step in your career process. And one thing you should certainly do is check out all the different university departments and medical research institutes to see what they have to offer and which one is a good fit for you. Obviously, we're hoping that SVI is the best fit for what you want to do next. So let me start off by introducing myself a bit more. Again, my name is Tom Brodnicki, and I head the immunogenetics research in the immunology and diabetes unit. And I'm also the Institute's student coordinator. And some of you may also know me as a lecturer at the University of Melbourne and at the Australian Catholic University. But before I get started with some more information about SVI, I thought I would start out with a bit of a teaser. At the end of the session today, I'll actually tell you how you can register for in-person tours that will take place next week. So I hope you'll stick around for another 20 minutes or so of me telling you about the student programs here at SVI, as well as finishing off by showing you how to write an email that will increase your chance of getting an interview with a potential supervisor. Now, to begin, I just want to remind you that if you have any questions, please do enter them in the webinar Q&A box. I can see there's a couple there already. We're going to answer them during the Q&A session with the student panel. So just keep adding the questions there as they come up, and I promise we'll get to them at the end. Now, the first thing I want to emphasize is that SVI has a number of opportunities for undergraduate and postgraduate studies, and I'm showing those here. But we also have lab positions like research assistants and technicians as well. But this afternoon, I'll focus mainly on telling you about the undergraduate and graduate training programs that we have here at SVI. In the first instance, a variety of undergraduate students over the years have taken advantage of our work experience program, mainly during summer or midterm holidays, occasionally during the term as well. And the bit of inside information, because you came today, is that we don't actually routinely advertise this work experience program. And the reason is that what we're really trying to do is look for those undergraduate students who are self-motivated and so enthusiastic about doing research that they contact a lab head on their own and convince them to take them on. So if you are going to be a second or third year undergraduate student next year, have a look at the labs on our website, and then don't be shy about emailing a supervisor and convincing them that they should give you a shot. Now, it is highly competitive, but it is an excellent chance to observe and learn new skills in an actual working lab. And of course, if you do this, then it will give you a leg up when you decide to go for an honors project. Now, as part of the Institute's general mission for teaching and training young investigators, various labs at SVI also provide undergraduate projects for third-year university coursework. A number of you may have already taken such a course or are in it right now. For example, those of you from ACU will know about the Work and Integrated Learning course. And those of you from Melbourne Uni will likely know about the research-based project courses through the microbiology and immunology department, or perhaps you're doing it through the pathology department. So if you do have a friend or classmate who's starting second or third year undergraduate studies next year, definitely let them know about the undergraduate opportunities at SVI. So I realize, however, that a number of you are here today because you're thinking about honors, which, as you're probably already aware, is an intensive one-year degree program. And for most university honors programs, there is a lab-based research component. It's typically about 75% of your time, and then a coursework component, which again is probably about typically 25% of your time. And these are carried out at the individual university departments in which you're going to be enrolled. So it depends on where you actually decide to enroll through honors. And I'll actually tell you a bit more about how we do the enrollment process in a couple slides. However, you should know that in addition to honors, we also host students undertaking a master's degree, which is also a research-based degree with additional coursework. And the primary difference to the honors degree is that a master's is a 2-year degree, and that involves a higher expectation of developing both a broader range and depth of expertise in your various technical and communication skills. And that's mainly in the research area and then the lab you've chosen where that occurs. And finally, we certainly like to recruit and train PhD students. Doing a PhD is an amazing experience and one in which you truly get a chance to develop into a scientist that knows how to develop and lead your own project with the ultimate goal of making a major discovery that leads to better treatments for patients in the clinic. And more importantly, at the end of your PhD training at SVI, you become a card-carrying expert in both a specific area of research, as well as a number of experimental techniques and assays. Not to mention a well-honed skill for just effectively telling everyone about what you know how to do. And so needless to say, at SVI, all the supervisors certainly find one of the more rewarding aspects of being a scientist is actually being able to train the next generation of successful students like yourselves. All right, so the real reason you're here today, and the key question, of course, is how do you find a student project at SVI? Well, the easiest way, simplest way is to go to our website and click on the Student and Careers button, and that's highlighted here by the red box. And when you do that, you'll get to this page that has all the student research projects. And you'll find there are a wide variety of student projects that are available. All you have to do is click on the title and to get to the full details, as well as find out the email contact for the supervisors. And so at present, last time I looked, there's at least 30 different student projects on offer. So definitely go and check this page out when you get a chance. Okay, so you found a project, and then you have to check it out online. And then the next thing, of course, is to contact the supervisor. And as you can see here, we have a variety of enthusiastic, friendly, and experienced supervisors to choose from. Another thing I should mention is that relatively often a student's project results in a collaboration with another lab, either inside or outside the institute. So in that case, you actually get 2 lab experiences for the price of 1. And I would also note that in all cases, a co-supervisor is assigned to assist your primary supervisor with your training and development. And so in that way, you have 2 mentors guiding you during your training. However, the other thing I want to point out is we don't just have academic labs. We maintain a wide variety and a number of service facilities, including the biological isolator facility, a flow cytometry facility, and also a biobank for tissue samples from patients and healthy subjects. And these are just to name a few of the facilities. We also have specialized teams in the Institute that are involved in clinical applications and clinical trials. And here I'm showing you members of the pancreatic islet isolation team. They actually use the biological isolator facility that's over there on the left-hand side to harvest islets that are then transplanted into individuals who have type 1 diabetes. And so very simply put, the subsequent islet transplant, if it all goes well, means the transplant recipient no longer has to inject insulin on a daily basis to regulate their blood glucose levels. And so as you might imagine, this is a life-changing procedure and one of the really exciting things that we do here at the Institute. Finally, we also have a few companies that are based out of the Institute. Ethica Biolabs provides preclinical trial services to biotech and pharmaceutical companies. Essentially, we specialize in testing different types of drugs for their ability to modulate immune responses in animal models and human tissues. And then in addition, the second one here, NRL, is a lab that does quality testing and accreditation, primarily for infectious diseases, and is also based out of SVI. And they played a role in helping with the various COVID-related activities during the past few years. And then finally, down here on the bottom, we actually have a group in the Institute involved in reagent manufacturing. And here in this picture, you can kind of see the production of some phosphocellulose paper bubbling away. I'm told this group are now selling this paper, which is used for certain types of kinase assays to more than 60 labs around the world. So there's plenty of opportunities to also get involved with different aspects of what's going on at SVI as a student. Now, outside of the lab and the facilities, we also have a communications and education team that works with both academics and the general public. We have a There we go. We have a business development team so that when groundbreaking discovery is made, the investigator can map out a plan to protect their intellectual property and then figure out the path to potentially translating this work either to biotech or big pharma or to establish a clinical trial. We also have dedicated team that makes sure our labs are running properly and are following all the current regulations to keep us safe in our workplace. And then last but not least, we have a very dedicated team who interact directly with the scientists to help them attract funding from various sources, both through general public philanthropy and through more traditional routes, such as government grants and disease foundations, such as Cancer Australia. Okay, so you found your project, you've got a supervisor that you want to approach. The question becomes, how should you write to that lab head or potential supervisor so you actually get a response to your email about a student project? First off, don't send this kind of email. And believe it or not, this example is one that I did receive, although I've changed the name to protect the sender. And you can see here, subject, looking for a project. Hey, Tom, I hope you have a student project in your lab. I'm a very ambitious person and I think I would do good work in your lab and make some amazing discoveries in bone disease. Oh, by the way, I don't work on bone disease. I work on autoimmune disease and genetics. Looking forward to talking with you, Bart. P.S. I can't work in your lab on Tuesdays because I have a job at a cafe. Now, I should point out that most lab heads might receive anywhere between 1 and 10 emails in any given week asking about the availability of a student position in their group. And hopefully I don't have to tell you that this is a particularly bad email, and few, if any, of the lab heads that I know and potential supervisors are even going to bother responding to it. Just no response at all. And clearly, the student in this case didn't do their homework. Instead, what I want to show you is the type of email you should write. Now, first off, it should be professional in tone with no spelling or grammatical errors. Hopefully that's an obvious point for me to make, but maybe just get someone to check that if you're not sure. Next, you want the email to convey 3 key items that can be broken down into 3 simple paragraphs. And so the first item in paragraph should introduce who you are and tell them that you have attached your CV and most recent grade transcript report. And if possible, indicate that you've worked in a lab before, or at the very least in a team environment, and make sure your CV emphasizes the relevant examples. So a nice first paragraph might read as follows. Dear Dr. Brodnicki, I'm a 3rd-year biomed student at the University of Melbourne, and I'm interested in an honors project in your lab. You'll see from my attached CV and grade transcript that I have experience working in a team environment and have achieved strong marks for my science coursework. So if you happen to have a WAM that is above 75, state that in the first paragraph, because all the potential supervisors will want to see your CV and know what marks you have. And if you have some strong marks in particular subjects that are relevant to the supervisor, highlight that in the first paragraph too. And so the problem is if they have to ask for these in a follow-up email and they read this, some supervisors may not even respond to your first email because they just want to get to the point right away. Okay, now the second paragraph highlights the second key item, and that's why you're interested in the group's work. And here you want to show that you've done your homework and state specifically a few reasons why you are writing to them about doing an honors project. So in this example, a second paragraph might be, I'm particularly drawn to your group's work because I've become interested in type 1 diabetes during my undergraduate studies. It seems from reading of your group's papers that your lab would provide a great opportunity to learn various techniques, single-chain RNA-seq, FACS, CRISPR gene editing, that your lab uses to identify and characterize genes that contribute to autoimmune disease pathogenesis. So what this second paragraph is really setting out to do is use a bit of flattery. And you've read their work, and it also indicates that you know what sort of techniques they use in the lab, and you are pointing out to the potential supervisor that these are the things that you want to learn more about. And these are some really good points to make if you want to get the attention of the lab head. Now, finally, the third paragraph should finish by telling them you would like to meet, remind them again why you want to meet, and then lastly, make sure you tell them when you are available. Give them a few days and times so they can pick one that will easily fit into their schedule. And I guess what I want to point out is if you do these three things and you do it well in an email, more often than not, you should get a response. And another last hint to do is CC the Institute student coordinator on your email. Because if it's me, I'll try as best as I can to follow up on your inquiry with the lab head. And so that way you have yourself and the student coordinator working on your behalf. Now, I have to say, it might still be that you won't get an interview, but typically a potential supervisor will reply to this type of email and tell you why they're not able to meet with you or they don't have a position. And clearly it could be for any number of reasons, but at least if you get a response, you'll know that they considered your email. And I'll give you one last professional tip. I would suggest not using exclamation points or emojis in your email. This is not an email to your family or a friend. You want to convey that you know how to be professional. So once you have the position and they've given you the job or the honors project or the PhD project or master's project, then find out if your supervisor likes using emojis. And you're going to find out quite a few of us do use them from time to time. Okay, you've written your emails and congratulations, it's led to your chosen supervisor offering you a project. The next step at SVI is actually the easy one, mainly because we directly work with you to set up your project and then help you with the enrollment process. One unique aspect of SVI is that we often have students from various universities enrolling in different degrees. And the thing that we're good at is we're very familiar with these processes and who the key contact people are at these universities. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the various deadlines and processes of the different universities. The key thing here is once the supervisor approves your candidature for placement at SVI, he or she will contact the student coordinator, that's me in the case of SVI, and then the two of us will assist you in the enrollment process. Step 2 is orientation and safety training with all the other new students starting at SVI. And what's great about this is you do it together, and it's a really good first way to get to know everyone who's going to be starting with you. Now, step 3 is also simple. You start your project in the lab. And this, of course, means what you really want to be doing is learning new techniques, but in particular under the supervision of the skilled research assistants and postdocs in the lab, as well as your fellow students who've already been working in the lab maybe for a year or 2 years already as a master's or a PhD student. And lastly, make sure you don't forget to take care of the assigned coursework for your degree. You should also know that during your entire training period at the Institute, you'll have a dedicated admin team, a dedicated IT team, technical lab support team, a human resource team, and then lastly, again, me, your friendly neighborhood student coordinator looking out for you. And the thing is, all that support is on top of everything else you're provided from the university in which you enroll. So joining a medical research institute, SVI, actually provides additional advantages than perhaps joining a department at a university. So simply put, I think that's the major advantage you'll have in doing your honors, master's, or PhD degree at SVI. I do want to point out, if you happen to be a University of Melbourne student and would like to find out more information about other honors or PhD projects here on the Eastern Hill campus, which is located at St. Vincent's Hospital, then please do feel free to check out the student info session that will be held next Wednesday on the 15th of September at 4 p.m. They tend to go into a lot more details about the process of enrollment at the University of Melbourne. And you can register for this online session at the web link shown here. And I'll also try to remember to put it in the chat box so you can copy it from there. Okay, as promised, I will tell you we'll be holding in-person tours at SVI, where you'll get a chance to visit the labs and meet with supervisors. These tours will be held next Tuesday and Thursday. Right now, we're thinking there'll be a morning tour from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then an afternoon tour from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on both those days. So to register, you can scan this QR code. Hopefully it'll work through your screen, or you can go to the SVI Student Open Day website. That information should be posted shortly after this webinar finishes, if it's not there already. And so when you register, you'll also be asked to list up to 4 labs or supervisors that you would like to visit, so we can arrange for you to meet with the supervisors or members of that lab if the supervisor isn't available. And then in addition, you'll see that it would be great, although it's optional, if you could upload your CV and your latest grade transcript. And what that is, that's going to really help me in convincing and organizing us with the supervisors a meeting to be had with you when you come to have a tour of the Institute. So I do hope that you'll think about doing a tour, as this really is, let's face it, the best way for you to see our Institute and whether or not a particular lab is a good fit for you. So definitely register as soon as possible, because I should say, unfortunately, we have limited spaces due to COVID restrictions. Now, with that, I'll end the information part of the online session, and I'd like to thank you for coming along and listening to that part. And we hope to see you sometime soon at SVI. Okay, now with that bit over, I'd like to turn over to the student panel. Hopefully they can turn on their videos and let them tell you a bit about student life at SVI, as well as answer any questions you might have. And I do see there are at least a few questions in the Q&A. We'll definitely get to those. And the way this is going to work is that I'll get them to introduce themselves in a second, and then I'll act as a moderator asking any questions that you might have. And again, as noted here, please don't hesitate to enter your questions in the Zoom Q&A. I'll also have a look at the chat box, but use the Q&A if possible. And David, I'm going to stop sharing here. And I think, why don't we start with you first, and you can tell us what degree you're pursuing, what year you're in, which lab you're in, and what your project is about. And I'll throw this challenge to all 4 of the students. Try and describe your project when it comes to your turn in doing the introduction in 2 to 3 sentences.
Sure. So I'm David DeGeorge, and I am in the iLab biology lab, which is again a part of the immunology and diabetes unit at SVI under Professor Helen Thomas. And I'm in my 2nd year of my PhD at the moment, and I guess my project is to do with using single-cell RNA sequencing and the non-obese diabetic mouse, which is a animal model for type 1 diabetes, to sort of investigate the role that these pro-inflammatory cytokines known as interferons play in regulating the CD8 positive T cells that are known to be involved in the autoimmune processes that underpin type 1 diabetes.
Great. I might head over, let's go to an honor student. Evelyn, I'll put you on the spot.
Hi guys, so I'm Evelyn and I am based out of the O'Brien Institute. So we are part of SVI, but we operate out of a separate building, which is really close by, literally just like 100 meters away. But my project is using stem cells to grow liver organoids. And essentially they are mini organs, so mini livers that you can kind of grow in a dish. And then we are transplanting them into mice at various different locations and comparing the survival at the different sites.
All right, next up is Neke. I'll throw over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Neke. I'm a 2nd year PhD student, supervised by Davis McCarthy, as well as Irene Galego Romero at the University of Melbourne. And my work, so I'll just try and describe it generally first. I use computational and statistical methods to answer questions in genomics. Currently, I'm focusing on characterizing the splicing landscape, looking at genomic variation within island Southeast Asia. So we have several under-characterized populations across Indonesia and Papua New Guinea that we are trying to characterize and just increase diversity in genomic research. I'm also helping out with a project at the University of Melbourne that deals with more on the ecology side of things and I guess conservation. We are working on bringing back the Tasmanian tiger. So I'm working on a little part of that with characterizing a new model system for the Australian dunart, the fat-tailed dunart, and using that as a means of improving annotation transcriptomics for that system and hopefully paving the way for a lot of work with the Tasmanian tiger project. That's it.
I have to say, I like camping in Tassie. I hope you don't bring it back too soon.
Oh no, I probably I probably won't.
Oliver, lucky last, go for it.
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many people here today. My supervisor is Andrew Sutherland and my co-supervisor is Gaurang Jalan. So I'm at the SVI. I see David quite a bit. He's in the shooter room with me. So my project's kind of looking at how different types of regulatory T cells are able to control a specific type of autoreactive T cells. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at two types of mice. So a mouse that has a receptor which has been knocked out. So that's the IL-17 receptor C. And so we're looking at how there are changes in different organs like the spleen, the pancreatic lymph node, also in the islets as well. And analyzing the differences between the knockout mouse and the mouse that the other mouse, which is called that we use as a sort of control. And so by looking at these differences, I can analyze how there's different levels of inflammatory markers and how they suppress the autoreactive T cells differently and looking at different markers of inflammation as well. And so hopefully the goal is to try and see if there's any differences between these two groups of mice and whether the cells that they have are different and whether that correlates to a difference in incidence or disease progression.
So hopefully everybody who's watching gets a good feel of the wide variety of research that we have here. And that's only touching on a little bit of it. Natalie Sims touched on it. Now, I noticed some of the first couple questions here are about whether or not there's going to be a recording made available. And yes, there will be a recording made available of at least the first part of the information session. The student panel, we tend not to record and make available. So stay online, ask your questions now. I've got a couple basic questions that, hello, I'm a second-year Bachelor of Medicine student from the University of Melbourne. I'm interested in taking the BioM 3003 during the summer next year. I'm wondering whether any opportunity will be available at SVI. We're actually not in control of that. That's up to the university and if they're going to hold that coursework project, I believe, during the summer. So if they do, they approach us about who wants to hold projects. So again, like I said during the talk, contact the supervisor and find out if they're willing to have you. You need to sell the supervisor on taking you in the lab. I'm going to skip down and go to this question. Why did you guys choose to pursue research? And I'm going to flip it around and maybe start with Oliver first this time.
Well, I think in the world of medicine, it's really interesting because like you look at research and you can look at it as in two ways. You can look at it as I'm in the lab all the time and I'm doing an experiment that's very specific to what I'm doing. But obviously the implications of what you discover can be so broad and you're really at the frontier of bringing new techniques into the clinical world and the things that you're able to discover, however big or however small, working with so many people from so many different backgrounds, sharing opinions, and everyone will have different specialties. And so when you're able to really collaborate with so many different people, it's such a great feeling because you might be stuck on a problem for so long and you might be trying to solve it in a certain way. And someone just says one thing and you say, oh, I've never thought about it before. And you try it and it works. And it's really great. And so I think for me personally, the reason why I was so interested in it is because I have like quite a few friends and family members that actually have diabetes. And so like they were talking to me about a lot of the issues that they went through, and that even though there's insulin treatment now, and that's really helping a lot of people to live better lives, it's still not the solution as I view it. And I think that if I can contribute to that, however small or however big. I think it's such a great feeling.
I think that makes a good transition. I'm gonna switch over to Evelyn because you were working on the organoids, and I'm curious, how you decided on doing research and maybe that particular aspect. And we'll try and keep our answers short so we can get through a lot of questions.
Sure, no worries. So I found that my undergraduate degree in biomedicine, particularly during COVID times, was very theoretical. Like I learned so much about all of these different diseases, but I was just lacking the practical element. And I got to third year and we learned about stem cells and I just loved it. But I really just wanted to be hands-on and actually experience, the lab setting. So I found that this complemented my undergrad really well, and it's given me a more holistic view of science. So now not only do I know the theory, but I also know some practical techniques. And I found that honours was the perfect way to do that. It's only a year, so you can really just see if this is for you. And for me, it's been a great opportunity.
I think that's a great point. Honors is a time to see if it's for you. I like curiosity too. The people who are curious do research. Neke, over to you. How did you decide the test? Well, you're doing a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I think for me, it was just the ability to, or the opportunity to make an impact in science, and also just to expand my knowledge base. I think those things really push me to be as involved scientifically as possible. I finished my master's, I'm from Canada, and I remember thinking, I know that I want to do a PhD, but I don't want to do it yet because I'm not 100% certain what I want to do it on. And that's just really good guidance as well from my master's supervisor, explaining to me that you don't have to do a PhD for the sake of doing a PhD. Do it when you find exactly what you're passionate about and what will drive you. My master's worked out a lot with epidemiology, virology, and I was still working in a computational setting. It was bioinformatics. But then I spent 6 years working at a cancer center in Toronto as a bioinformatician, and that really exposed me to a wide range of opportunities in terms of how I can define myself as a bioinformatician. What kind of work can I do to incorporate the things that I'm passionate about? I'm passionate about medical research. I'm passionate about diversity in the samples that we obtain and who oversees how samples are analyzed, who dictates, how the stories are put together from the data that we get. Those things are really important to me. And I think I found a great opportunity to do that at SVI, and that's why I'm here.
Kind of amazing, come across all the way from Canada to research in SVI. Was part of it sort of the challenge, the thrill of coming to Australia as well?
Australia is super far from Canada, and it's a place that's kind of on everyone's general bucket list, but realistically, I probably would not have been able to afford to do a big trip here anytime soon. So it was one of those places where I'm like, oh, that would be super cool. But again, it had to be the right project. It had to be the right time. I think everything fell into place for me once I felt that I was hitting that kind of point of complacency as a bioinformatician in my other position. I said, I feel like I've learned all that I can learn from this position. Time for me to challenge myself, but I have to find the right challenge. And Australia was a challenge in many ways, putting myself outside of my comfort zone and being so far from family. But it's a learning experience for sure. It's good.
Now, David, before I throw to you, I'm going to just answer a couple quick questions. I'm wondering if I'm a mid-year entry student finishing my honors next June, is it too early to contact supervisors for PhD opportunities now, or should I wait early next year? It is never too early to contact lab heads and supervisors about a position in their lab, because they'll love to hear from you and know, and then they'll plan in advance that you're going to be coming. And a lot of times that helps with figuring out how to find funding for a particular project that you're excited in. I see a lot of heads nodding. I'll do one more. Is there potential for mid-year entry into honors at SVI? Again, remember, we enroll you through the different universities departments. So you really have to check with the university or department. If you shoot me an email and ask me about that and tell me the university department, I'm happy to respond to your email. So I won't touch on specific universities during this. David, over to you. So tell us about why you got into research.
Well, I think the main driver for me going into research was probably that number one, there are always questions. So I actually majored in anatomy, which you would think after how long we've been studying anatomy that we'd have it down pat, but actually even in something as constant as anatomy, there are still a lot of questions. And also the second part sort of feeding in from that is that I do like the idea that in research you can solve problems, you can those problems can have big impacts, as Oliver said, and also you can be quite flexible. So you know, you can work on something, especially for me, for example, I was obviously driven towards immunology, and because of that, there are a huge range of questions that I can work on. You know, I'll be working on this project that I'm working on for my PhD. After that, I'll have the skill set to work on something else to do with immunology or continue on with autoimmunity. You know, it's just that there are a lot of possibilities, I think, and that's something that really excites me about research.
Now, for those of you who put questions, I'm going to jump around a little bit, try to keep a flow in terms of concept. This question has, I'm curious to hear what you guys are going to say to this question. What are the hours like in the lab? I'll go to Evelyn first, because I'll do the honor students first, because that's really an intensive 1 year.
Yeah, I think this is very individual. It'll depend on your project and your supervisors. So this is, of course, just my personal experience and not something that will occur across the board. But I'm here pretty much like a full-time job. So in the same way that you would probably do a 9 to 5 if you had a job, I'm here roughly those hours, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the week and what's going on. On top of that, you do need to fit in your assignments, thesis writing time for Oliver and I right now. So it's definitely a big commitment, but in saying that, I still have a job, I still see my friends, I still do co-curriculars, so don't be disheartened by that. But honours in particular is quite intense. I know the PhD students in my building probably have a little bit more flexibility just based on the nature of their coursework and project, but yeah, for us, it's quite a lot.
I'll let the PhD students speak for themselves, but I'll say the third year, when you're getting close to finishing up, it gets a little bit more stressful. Oliver, what are your hours like in the lab?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Evelyn. I think one thing to really remember is that it is very individual. It depends which supervisor you're working with, and don't be like afraid if you're in that situation to say like, okay, I think maybe I need to dedicate the next 2 days to writing my literature review. I need to dedicate the next 2 days to doing this assignment. Supervisors are very understanding that you do have other coursework and other things to do. But having said that, you will need to dedicate like a lot of time in the lab, because ultimately, like, it is your project, right? You want to do well. You want it to reflect all the hard work that you've been doing. And so the more time you put in, the better it will be ultimately. And so it's just up to you. But I think, as Evelyn said, you will be there probably 9 to 5 most days.
I think for me, again, just not to be redundant with what was already said, one thing I do want to emphasize is that one thing I noticed is that not just for my own supervisor, Davis McCarthy at SVI, but SVI staff in general are really big on making sure that everyone is able to maintain a good work-life balance. And I think that is a consequence of the fact that it does feel like a big family, and everyone genuinely cares about your health, your mental health, your well-being. So as everyone mentioned, making sure that yes, you are putting in the necessary hours as you would for a full-time job and putting in your best during those hours, but you're not expected to, you know, break your back sun up to sundown. And it's just, it's really up to you to determine the amount of time and effort you're willing to put in. And you're always going to have the support necessary if you do fall behind, or if there's something that affects your timelines or your, you know, deliverables. But I've never had issues with that, and very flexible.
So
and just
David,
to add something, so can I just add something to I think like the other thing which is really interesting is that depending on what experiments you do, you might find yourself with like large periods of time where you have free. For example, if you've got an experiment that you put on in the incubator at 1, it might only be ready by 3 or 4 p.m. And so sometimes what I would do is I'd take that time to go to the gym or go for a walk or have lunch with some friends. And so like it's really flexible in that sense. Again, it does depend on your project, but yeah, there's a lot of time for you to do other things.
Now, David, tell us that you put in mega hours. Come on.
Yeah, I will say there is, I think this thing in research where it does always feel like there's something to do. Like there's always something to fill a gap in time. So there are always more papers that you feel like you could read. There are always more experiments that you think that you can do. And I guess sort of as has already been said, it is important to remember the work-life balance thing because of that. I think it can be very easy to say, you know, come to work the full work day, go home, think now I've got to read some papers, now I've got to write this, now I've got to do that. And, you know, work until 10, 11 o'clock at night every day and think, well, where's my free time? You know, it's important to remember that I think that you should have some free time and you don't want to burn out early, especially in a PhD, you know, especially just before your thesis is due as an honors student, you know, something like that.
I think that's a really important point. You know, having that free time actually makes you more creative, less stressed, so that you are more productive when you are working. But let's not sugarcoat it. There are times when you put in, like the experiments do require you to put in sometimes a 12-hour day, or there's that deadline that your supervisor is giving you on some results for a paper because the reviewers want you to have it. Another good question here is, what directions are you guys thinking of heading after completing your honors master's PhD? Let's try and keep that one short, because on some level, the world's your oyster when you do get, you know, finish your honors, your PhD. You have even more options that you can think about. But I'm curious, one or two options from each of you that you're thinking about. I'll go Evelyn first this time.
Yeah, so I've been studying for a long time. So I think next year I'm going to finally hit the workforce, probably in research or something adjacent to that. And then after that year, I'll probably consider further study.
Neke, how about you?
I'm interested in medical research within industry. And also I'm very passionate about mentorship. So long term, I would probably look into leading some type of team or organization that would help get more young people excited about science.
Oliver, how about you? So I'm actually quite torn between staying and doing a PhD or pursuing clinical medicine. I don't think there's anything else to add other than that, but I guess it's just a decision I'm gonna have to make. But I think the important point is that when you do an honors or a PhD or a master's, you just have so many options. And so, as Tom said, the world is your oyster. So
I think that that's a good point. There will be some people in the audience wondering if they should, you know, they're going to do honors and then afterward. Now, if you do your honors year and you really enjoy it and you were thinking about clinician, you can go do your PhD and go back to medicine or vice versa. You know, you don't have to exclude one over the other. A little bit more work, of course, but definitely switch out those possibilities. David, how about you?
Yeah, so like Oliver, I was sort of torn between medicine and research. That's why I did my honors, and I really enjoyed my honors, and that sort of solidified the idea that I want to stay in research. I think I'm particularly interested in staying in academic research if I can. So hopefully doing a postdoc, maybe here or abroad, is probably my immediate goal after my PhD, and then see where I go from there.
Yep. I'm going to go back to the questions. Hello, this might be a stupid question. Actually, it's not. It's a really good one. Should I email multiple potential supervisors at the same time or one by one? I'm going to throw it out to you guys because I'm curious what you did when you were looking for supervisors. I'm going to go to Neke first because from Canada, I'm curious, you know, did you investigate various places besides here at SVI?
Yeah, one big thing for me was the duration of the PhD, as well as the opportunity to get funding. It's very difficult in Canada to get fund. Well, first of all, bioinformatics PhD in Canada would have been around 5-6 years. I would not have been able to get funding for the entirety of it. Same thing in the US, the PhDs are longer than they are here. There's a lot of coursework involved as well, which takes your time away from the research at times. So I knew that I wanted to kind of make sure that I was looking at those two factors. And yeah, I applied based on the project. So I think I probably emailed 3 PIs at the same time. And that was the max, just because I wasn't seeing a whole bunch of things that I was, interested to move across the world for. But again, it's really personal journey. It really depends on where you're at currently in life. Some people are looking at juggling work and school, so that will also kind of dictate where you go, how many people you're willing to reach out to. And yeah, I think my situation was just different because I was very particular and really specific because I was going to move so far.
Yep. Evelyn, how about you? How many supervisors? And we won't tell your current supervisor how many people you approached.
Yeah, so I started really early, actually before any of these sort of information sessions. So when I did that, I started with probably 2 or 3 at a time. Not saying I emailed hundreds, but and then based on their responses, I would either pursue interviews with them or start looking elsewhere. But I will mention that at University of Melbourne specifically, you can preference up to 4 projects. So with that being said, you don't have to just sort of like lock into one supervisor straight away. You can actually explore your options a little bit and find the best fit in terms of location, in terms of the supervisor, the lab environment. Yeah, it's good to sort of get a feel for what's out there.
How about you, David? How many did you approach and how did you go about it?
Yeah, so for my honors, I approached maybe probably 8 to 10 supervisors in total. So I emailed them, and probably from that, I sort of emailed them in 2 groups, I think. And from that, I ended up meeting with 4 or 5 of them. So that for me was good for, as you said, with Unimelb, you can choose up to 4. So it was good to see 4 or 5 people and then preference those people. But yeah, I did email multiple at a time, just because generally you have to do this sort of when you're doing your exams for the previous year. So it's nice to not have to do it sequentially, to be able to meet people, send out those emails, wait for responses to come at various time points after that, rather than having to wait for each email to come back before you can make a decision to send the next one.
And how about you, Oliver? Clearly, at least 20, is that right?
Yeah, no, I think I emailed probably about between, similar to David, probably around 8 or 10. But I think the reason I decided to email 10 supervisors was because I wanted to get an idea of the differences in how different institutes kind of ran their honors programs. And so I emailed a few from each institute. I think ultimately the reason why I decided to go with the SVI was because of that whole collaborative aspect. Like, it really is an environment where if you don't know how to do something, it doesn't just have to be a supervisor that helps you with that. It can be another PhD student, it can be even a master's student or research assistant or anyone there, really, because so many people have so much experience in different areas. And so I think that's what's great about the SVI. And so especially similar to what David did, I emailed, I think 8 or 10, and then from that met with 3 across 3 different institutes, and then I preferenced SVI first, primarily because of that reason, because I just thought it was such a great atmosphere.
Let's knock out a few of these questions. Can we apply for student research project while we are doing our undergraduate degree? Yes, I can't say yes enough. The earlier you talk to potential supervisors for honors or work experience, the sooner you get into the lab, get some work experience as an undergraduate even, the better you look when you go to apply for honors and PhD, and just getting that experience under your belt. Not to mention just finding out if you like doing research even before you do your honors year. Let's see. This is a good one. I'll just jump down to this one. I'll come back to the other ones. What drew you to SVI? I'll go back again to, well, I think you kind of touched on it already, so I might skip you on this one. I'll go to David and ask him what drew you to SVI, because you said you contacted about 8 or so different supervisors.
Yeah, so I think for me, I was keen, I think, to get off campus after being on campus for 3 years of an undergrad. And probably the main thing that drew me to SVI was how I felt about the supervisor that I contacted, so the current one that I have now. I think that's important when you're deciding on a project, and I was told that it's important to sort of half your project is this something you'd be interested in? So during my undergrad, I'd heard some lectures from Tom Brodnicki, for example, and that's how I knew about the institute. But the other half of the project is how you get along with your supervisor, I think. So for me, that was the main draw. I'd say the reason for why I stayed at SVI after my honours and to begin my PhD was really because of a lot of the things that Natalie was talking about, for example, at the beginning, to do with, there are a lot of disciplines that are researched at SVI. And what that means is everybody collaborates together, both between the smaller institutes in this area on the St. Vincent's Hospital campus, but also within the institute, there are a diverse range of technologies that are being used and projects that are being worked on. So you can have this intra-institute collaborations as well.
I might interrupt you before you take all the different reasons to join SVI, and maybe throw over to Evelyn and see what drew her to SVI. Or, and I should say OBI, because OBI is part of SVI, and they have a separate building. So if you come and have a tour, we can show you how that synergy works. It's quite good, actually.
So the first thing I decided was that I probably wanted to be off campus and instead somewhere that sort of was hospital adjacent, because I'm interested in medicine. So I thought that would be cool. I thought it sounded good. And then kind of like David, I was really drawn to my supervisors. And one thing that's really cool about my project is my supervisor is a researcher, but he's also a surgeon. So I think that's a really unique opportunity on a personal level to chat about his life as a surgeon, but also for my project. My project is predominantly microsurgery. So that's probably not something that could be done on campus. And I've had this really cool opportunity to be mentored by him, learn the basics of microsurgery. And I think that's just really unique. And O'Brien Institute, where I am specifically, that is a microsurgery institute. So when I applied, I didn't even know that. I thought it was all just like one building. So I kind of discovered that later. So it's not really a reason why I initially went into it, but it's ended up being this like added bonus. And it's cool. Like we have our own little family within here, but we are so close to the main SVI building. I'm in there like a few times a week. So yeah.
Oliver, how about you?
Yeah, and they've got the coolest lab coats over there with a little hummingbird on it with its little beak doing its microsurgery. No, I think for me, I wasn't really sure whether when I finished my research or my degree, whether I wanted to stay in Australia or whether I wanted to go abroad. And my supervisor's got experience overseas as well. And I thought that was really relevant because I wanted to be able to ask him about, what decisions he made in his career and why he decided to move there. And when I had my interview, it was actually funny because we were only supposed to meet for 20 minutes or so, and we ended up talking for an hour. And so I think those kind of things are where you really need to focus on. And yes, like there'll be a lot of interesting projects. And I think especially coming out of an undergrad, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people won't know exactly what they want to study or exactly what they want to do. So don't underestimate the importance of like having a really good relationship with your supervisor. Get to know them, talk to them. It really is, it's a two-way street. So just because, you might feel your supervisor might want you have to really analyze it for yourself and think about what's right for you and build that relationship to then move forward, because I think, yeah, that'll be a huge point in your whole degree. If you love your supervisor and you love your project, that's great, and I think that really helps in times where you need extra assistance to be able to just say, I'm going to walk into their office now and ask them, I'm going to walk into their office now and talk to them, and not have that little thing in the back of your head thinking, oh, they might be too busy or they might be doing something else, they might be preoccupied, because as an honest student as well, you will need a lot of support.
Okay, what have we missed? Or have we touched on everything? I'm throwing it back to you. I lied.
Yeah, I think everything has been touched on.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. So somebody here has asked a technical question. Is there a cutoff WAM? What if it's less than 75 just by a bit? Can I still be considered? Of course you can. The thing is, 75 is sort of this cutoff we use at the Institute for consideration. One of the things you have to realize, the competition's stiff. So if your WAM is on, say, the lower side, what you need to do is convince the supervisor that, why you should be accepted for that particular project. In this case, you really have to do your homework. You really have to write a good email to get their attention. Maybe it's something about experience. And if it's early on, if you're in your second year, try to get some work experience in a lab. And then the last thing I can only say is get your grades up. It helps to have a higher WAM, and that's just the fact of the matter. Let's see, there's a couple about where we can access the recording. We're going to put the recording later up on the website, probably happen about next week sometime. So if you want to do that. The other one is, did you email supervisors based on your interest in their projects, or supervisors who were good mentors for PhD or honors? That's a really good one, because ideally you want a good project and a good supervisor. But what if this is a project I really want, but maybe the supervisor, you didn't click when you had your interview, and kind of curious about that aspect of things. David, maybe I'll start with you first this time.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I think both sort of really contribute to how your project will go. I think at the end of the day, I picked my project because it was interesting, and the bonus was that my supervisor was good. So I think generally, like, it depends on how you feel. I think generally I would say emphasize a project that you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, that's what you'll have to work on. If it's for your honors or for your PhD, that's what you have to be motivated for, is your project. So I think that's sort of my reasoning.
Neke, how about you?
Yeah, the process was, it's quite complicated when you're not in the country. That communication through video is very critical. So that first meeting for me was through video. It's very important for me to be able to gauge, or for anyone in that situation to gauge, the extent to which the supervisor actually cares about the students. I think we talk a lot about, it's very important to be passionate about the work you do and to like the supervisor, but also take time to speak to students who are in that lab. I know it's a difficult position to be in as a student, to get certain questions and wonder, okay, do I actually tell them? Or because who knows, right? You might ask somebody a question and they might share something, and then you might accidentally share it with someone else, and then they end up looking like the bad guy. So you have to be careful, of course, with the type of probing questions you ask, but it's very important to make sure that this is a lab environment that you think you would thrive in. And of course, the mood or the tone is set from the top, right? So the PI, the leader, sets that tone, and really dictates the extent to which people in the lab actually want to collaborate with each other, actually work with each other, and encourage each other. So that was really important to me. And when I spoke to my chosen PI through video, they encouraged me. That was a big thing for me. They told me, this is the contact info for these people in my lab. Please contact them. Please check the lab website, email whomever. Feel free to ask about anything. And that kind of made me feel that there was a sense of transparency and integrity. And this is something that Natalie Sims touched on at the beginning. There's an integrity with respect to the research that is done, but also with how we deal with each other and how we respect each other as individuals and not just as scientists. So that was really big for me.
I have to say, I agree with that. If definitely ask the lab head or the supervisor if you can chat to members of the group. They should quickly and easily say yes, in my opinion. Evelyn, how about you?
Yeah, so I think it should be almost like a two-stage approach, where first you're only really emailing groups whose projects you're interested in. So of maybe the roughly like 8 to 10 that I had emailed, so similar to everyone else in numbers, I would have almost been happy with any of those projects because there's no point emailing someone whose project you don't really care about. And then once you're in a situation where you like all the projects, at that point, you start looking at the supervisors and the fit. And it might be a good environment for someone else, but not for you because, you know, we're all different. So yeah, you can find that out by chatting to the supervisors and you can kind of tell who you'll get along with really well.
Oliver.
So I think the other students have sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of everything. So I think I'm just going to switch up a bit and say, when you have your interview, don't be afraid to, I guess, quantify your interests. And what I mean by that is, this is what I did. I said, I'm going to put this project first because I really want to do this project. And that way your supervisor knows, okay, this student's very interested. Because at the end of the day, you'll never know which preference you're going to get until you get that email that says, hey, you're in, congratulations, this is the project you're going to get. But I think it's very important for your supervisor as well to feel that commitment from you. And that's why I said when I had my interview, yeah, this is the project that I really want to do.
From a supervisor standpoint, I know all the supervisors like it when the students clearly indicate, you know, if their project is something that the students are interested in. I'm going to ask, there's a question here, how can I benefit attending your in-person tours as a second-year biomed student at ACU? It really doesn't matter if you're a second-year student at ACU or any other university. It is a benefit. Again, the sooner that you come and check out different departments, medical research institutes, when you get a chance, it gives you a better idea and a heads up in your third year when you really have to go through the process. Again, it's a little bit trickier when you're a first or second year student because you're looking at work experience or maybe a course related project. Not all of the labs are going to have those types of positions, but you won't know until you check out the website, look at the student projects and contact the supervisors. And that way it's a little bit of a numbers game. You might have to check in with quite a few supervisors before you find one that's willing to take you on, but it's definitely always do things in person if you get a chance. I'm going to finish off because we've had quite a few questions. Actually, there was one more. Let me just say. The registration link, before we get to the last question, this question is, when will the link be available? I can only access the online Zoom page through the QR code. The information will get put up relatively either today, a little bit later after this session's over, or it'll be up first thing tomorrow morning. So check back tomorrow, please. The last question, I think this is a good one to end on, is how is the student experience? Are the events that promote relationships with other SVI students? I'm thinking about, what do you guys do for fun as students? Is there a student society? I might just lead with David because he's the co-president of the St. Vincent's Student Society, and then the others can comment on other aspects or that as well. David, over to you.
Yeah, so we have a student society here, and we will try to plan for at least one big event a month. Well, sort of, I say big, but sort of one event per month, and that can range anywhere from things that sort of help with professional development, science communication, writing skills, that sort of thing, also through to fun things that we can just do together. For example, last month we went to the zoo, so you can interact with other students at SVI. Sometimes we'll hold slightly bigger events as well that include students from other institutes that are within the same campus. So definitely we have a good setup to help students get together, because we know that that's important. You know, students usually are going through the same thing at the same time, so it's good to you know, for everyone to be able to communicate with each other, spend time with each other, understand what student life is like. So it's definitely a big thing at SVI to focus on students getting together. Yeah.
Oliver, how about you?
I think the most important thing to really like understand is that everyone's so excited to meet new people. And so when there's new students that come, it's so great to see like fresh new faces, full of energy, full, like very vibrant. And so I think don't be afraid that like you're gonna be there and it's gonna be hard to talk to people, hard to meet new people. You might be coming from a different country, or you might be coming from interstate. But I think the bottom line is you'll meet like fantastic people. Whether you come to the SVI or whether you go elsewhere, obviously it'd be great to see you at the SVI. But I think bottom line is you'll have a great time. We have a lot of events, as David said, like going to the zoo and going bowling, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, you'll really enjoy it.
Evelyn.
Yeah, so coming from somewhere like Biomed, there's over 500 people in your degree, and you hear constant stories about how no one really knows each other. You might make some friends one semester and then they're gone the next, but it's really cool here. There's not that many students compared to, say, a huge university. So it's really nice that you can actually foster really good friendships. Like our honours cohort is quite small this year. So even Oliver gets numerous phone calls from me a week, and we're all going through the same thing. So like I can ring and complain and be like, my experiment just failed, and he gets it. And so do the other honours students. So it's really nice to be able to go through it with them together. And then again, for Melbourne University specific, we had our coursework subject together. So that was really fun. We'd catch up, have donuts, go through what we needed to do. And yeah, I'm sure the other universities have similar things.
That's a good point. I should point out we have at any given time at the Institute between 30 and 40 PhD students, 5 to 10 or 12 honor students in a given year, and then 5 to 10 master students. So there is this camaraderie that can occur because there's still quite a few students, but not so many that you don't get to know everyone. Becky, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Yeah, because I spend half my time at SVI and half my time at Melbourne Parkville campus. It is, and again, it's not just an Australian thing, any big university, anywhere you feel like a number. And just again, what Evelyn touched on is the sense of community, the sense of camaraderie, and the emphasis on respecting you as an individual, a person, first and foremost. And everyone that I've encountered and everything that I've experienced has allowed me to always feel like there's a sense of community, and I feel as though I am part of something greater than myself. And that I think is really important as a student, especially as a student coming from another country, because you've left behind your comfort zone, your family, your friends, and you're searching for that sense of community. So that's really important to me, and that has been great. And I've seen that not just with myself, but other fellow lab mates who have also come from abroad or have not been here for too long. And they always say that SVI has been nothing but welcoming. And I think that's a huge, huge, huge positive.
There's one last question. It's about the recording again. I just want to let everybody know the recording will be made available on the SVI website. And I'll most likely, since somebody asked about it, I'll send out an email to everybody who registered to let them know when that link is up and live. And please send that to your friends. Look, time is getting on and we seem to have answered all the pressing questions of the moment. I really want to thank our student panelists for helping out today. I think they did a great job. Hopefully you got some insights about the Institute, but also about doing an honors or PhD program as well. And most importantly, I want to thank you for coming along to our information session. Don't forget to register for our in-person tours. And so in the meantime, it's goodbye from us for now, and we hope to see you sometime soon at SVI.